Hi there. Thank you for tuning in to my midterm presentation project. I decided to do it on the movie Jurassic World, which was released in 2015. Um, yeah, thanks again for tuning in. Without any further ado, let's talk about the plot summary first. So, built on the site of the original Jurassic Park, um, a new and far more technologically advanced amusement park has been constructed, and the island acts as a massive a zoo, for a lack of better terms, for many of the different species of previously extinct dinosaurs that have been reanimated and put in enclosures here for the public to view. Um, Reviving these species of dinosaurs was made possible through many years of research and advancement in the realm of genetic engineering, all led by a Dr. Wu, who is shown right here in this picture. He takes on a little bit more of an antagonistic character for this particular movie, um, and he has been doing this research and advancement for the purpose of the Jurassic Parks for a very long time, dating before the original Jurassic Park, dated 1993. Another antagonist that appears in the show, shown here, his name is Vic Hoskins. Um, Tens of thousands of people at a time flock to the park for entertainment, while some seek to harness this power of genetic engineering as a weapon. One such being Vic here. He is the park's security force leader, um, and he advocates for the use of the dinosaurs created to replace soldiers in a sense, or be used in tandem with soldiers. Upon the escape of an experimental asset known as the Indominus Rex, multiple security measures fail, and the park quickly becomes a feeding ground for the lab-created creatures, including the Indominus. The Indominus getting out of its enclosure kind of wreaks havoc on the other enclosures and provides them with the ability to either escape and cause havoc on the park, or simply get into combat with the Indominus, who is clearly the apex predator, or at least the dinosaur apex predator on the island during the movie. With a little bit of back or a little bit of basics on genetic engineering, um, which again is um, a subsection of biochemical engineering, um, that was used to reanimate these dinosaurs for the films. Um, Using laboratory-based technology, scientists today are able to edit DNA by changing a single base pair, or removing sections of DNA and or adding entire segments to a cell or an organism. Uh, and in order to create the dinosaurs, the scientists, they pulled samples from other uh, creatures seen just throughout the world, and used their genetics for specific abilities, or appearances, or instincts, or uh, different attributes for these dinosaurs were pulled from other living creatures on the planet that had similar structures for their DNA. A little more on genetic engineering as a general. According to the World Health Organization, application of somatic human genome editing has already been undertaken, including in vivo editing to address HIV and sickle cell diseases, for example. Um, we have already begun using this technology to edit human DNA, to compensate for defects, or diseases, or viruses. It's become a very advanced technology at the use of humans. Now, some questions that I was able to gather from watching the films, some ethical questions. How moral is it to edit the genome of an unborn baby to correct defects? And in this context, what constitutes as a defect worthy of genetic modification? These are more questions generated from the ethical issues behind genetic engineering as in a general sense. How moral is it to edit a human genome to cure hereditary diseases? How moral is it to perform de-extinction practices? This is a little bit more specific to our movie here. And what rights should that slash those creature or creatures have? Um, there was a great quote, well, not a great quote, but um, back here with our one of our antagonists, Vic, there's a quote right from the movie where he says, "Extinct animals have no rights." I thought that was an interesting hot take on it. Um, Basically saying that because they were created by humans, obviously the humans hold all of their rights. Was his perspective on it. Um, Now, how moral is it to create an entirely new species using genetic engineering? And what rights should that slash those creature or creatures have? Now, the Indominus Rex is a perfect example here. Right from the movie, they create the Indominus Rex using DNA structures kind of hodgepodge together from multiple different species of living creatures and organisms, so that they can get specific traits to make it bigger, scarier, faster, more powerful. Um, and another great quote here is because Doctor Wu was the one in charge of making it, or making the Indominus. He says, "You didn't ask for reality; you asked for more teeth." In reference to when he was given the assignment to create the Indominus Rex as a new um, um, attraction at the park, he was instructed to make something with the wow factor, something that would impress, and so he created something that would even scare the adults. Was another quote in the movie, um, which I thought was interesting. Was the strategy behind creating the Indominus Rex and why? Um, Now, what rights to genetic information privacy should humans have? Um, and what rights to genetic information and privacy should non-human creatures have? Um, Now, with the idea of genetic privacy, um, we as a human society have gotten really good at DNA tracing, whether it be for crimes like pulling fingerprints, DNA fingerprinting, in order to track or learn the identity of somebody, or um, multiple scenarios where DNA could be used to identify somebody or link somebody to something. What rights do we have to keep our genetic information to ourselves, or we uh, do we as humans forfeit that right as we live in a country or in a society where perhaps a data bank of human genetic information should be kept, so that if a crime is committed, people can be linked to it and be punished justly. um what kind of rights and where do they lie, is a question that came up for me. Now, more specifically for weaponized genetics, and as I referenced earlier, one of our antagonists, Vic, he is very keen on using these creatures and these advancements in technology um, to create a weapon, um, or use as a an alternative to human lives in the field of combat. One of the quotes that he directly says in the movie is in reference to the Indominus Rex. He says, "Deadly, intelligent, able to hide from the most advanced military technology, a living weapon unlike anything we've ever seen." Um, Now, when he references the ability to hide from the most advanced military technology, at one point in the movie, they actually can't find the Indominus Rex. They are afraid he's escaped, or excuse me, she has escaped, as all the dinosaurs are actually female. Fun fact. Um, but regardless, they're under the impression that she has escaped her enclosure, and they can't find any heat signatures for her in the enclosure. Uh, but when in fact, due to her specific genetic makeup, she was given a gene from, I believe it was cuttlefish, that have the ability to mask their thermal presence. Um, Now, Dr. Wu was surprised to hear that the Indominus was able to do this feat. But again, it's a consequence of hodgepodging genetics together in order to create something where we really have no idea what it could be, or what abilities it could possess, or you obviously we are splicing them together to try to create something, but there's no way to know until it's too late in this case, where they had no idea that the gene for being able um, to mask that thermal presence would be present in this created creature. Um, he also he is in reference to Vic, advocates throughout the film um, for the use of Dr. Owen Grady, one of the film's protagonists, and his trained, in parentheses, velociraptors to stop the Indominus Rex. I wanted to say trained here because they use it in the term widely, but I think it's important to stress that the velociraptors that have been quote unquote trained in this scenario, they do end up attacking other humans, and they definitely show a serious individuality where they're not very like trained like dogs per se, or like hunting dogs or attacking dogs with the military. They are very much independent creatures and hard to control. um there are no control for there is no controlling them. Dr. Owen is their alpha, and they hold a respect for Dr. Owen, but Dr. Owen does not give them commands, in a sense, or like attack. He he is very much simply the alpha and respected as such, but is still in danger of them at all times. And uh, Vic advocates for using them to take down the Indominus, using them as a weapon. Once he hears that they respond to Dr. Owen, and have the potential to be, like I said, quote unquote, trained, he advocates for turning them into a weapons program immediately. He also argues that I skipped this line earlier, but he argues that using the dinosaurs would reduce human casualties during wartime, and therefore would be moral. At the expense of dinosaur lives, we save human lives, and therefore it's moral for our society to do this action in Vic's argument. Uh, Additionally, I wanted to say biochemical warfare is a hot topic for ethical concerns across the world today, and has been since the history of warfare's beginning. I mean, for example, like Mongol invaders, they catapulted plague victims into besieged cities to eradicate populations. Or another example of biochemical warfare being used is British settlers distributing like smallpox infected blankets to Native Americans. um, it, Biochemical warfare has many faces, and one of them now being in this fictional setting, creating dinosaurs with the idea of letting them loose in battle torn areas, or in war settings to to replace human foot soldiers. Another series of questions that came to mind here with the category of being of exposure to the public. Should these reanimated creatures be put on display for the public, and should they be contained in enclosures? An alternative to maybe having a park and bringing people here would be to have a wildlife preservation, and like videos and documentaries are taken, and humans aren't allowed into that preservation for their own safety and also for the ecosystem of these should be extinct creatures. Um, and to what extent should creatures be returned from extinction? And what gives certain species the rights to be reanimated over others? Um, so like why dinosaurs and why not, extinct birds or cats that have recently gone extinct just due to the natural process. And if those kinds of creatures should be brought back, why shouldn't all of them be brought back? Or vice versa, if we are going to uh, omit some species from being brought back from extinction, um, what gives other species the right to be reanimated? Um, I really thought that was one of the more interesting things. And is it really the greed of humanity to see, a cool dinosaur that is the reason we reanimate an extinct species? Um, I just kind of view it as a very bleak outlook on, how sad it is that that's where human nature is in this instance, or I mean, even worse, creating them for warfare. Um, but to move on, to what degree should the reanimated ecosystems be kept separate from existing ecosystems, and what effect would this have on the naturally occurring wildlife? So I guess what I had in mind for this was, should these dinosaurs that we've brought back to life be released into the wild to adapt and survive on their own, or should we provide some kind of protection or enclosure or separation and keep those environments completely separate, so that both parties can thrive, um, or one party be saved, or what degree do we need to implement a separation or a unity for these two separate ecosystems, and and how? Now, my last set of questions here regards how should society proceed. Um, I could personally foresee limitations on who can practice genetic engineering. For example, like what organizations are allowed to do different kinds of research or experimentation. Um, whether it be in a creature perspective, like we have here for Jurassic World, um, you know, creating these different species using, DNA splicing, or do we restrict use of genetic engineering to, curing hereditary diseases, or curing defects in unborn children? Um, do we separate and limit different sectors of the genetic engineering? Furthermore, should we place restrictions on the methods and technologies needed to perform genetic engineering? Um, the different tools that researchers are using, and different methods that are used to cure these diseases or defects, um, or create these new creatures. Um, is there a restriction needed on those equipments um, and processes? Uh, Additionally, how available, if at all, should genetic engineering be um, to human and non-human populations? I apologize about that error there. Double available, but how available should they be to both the human and non-human populations? Um, like for example, here in Jurassic World, um, the non-human population has far more access to this genetic engineering, as they are literally genetically engineered creatures, and that is where the focus of their research is put on. However, would it be morally right to to change that entire mindset into helping and producing um, for the human population, and what basis do we need in order to have that transition? Like what makes it more morally right to focus these technologies and resources on humans as opposed to uh, performing de-extinction practices? Uh, and lastly, when, if at all, during the lifespan of a living creature, should genetic modification be allowed? Um, we've been talking about uh, uh, splicing the DNA of unborn children to cure hereditary diseases or defects. You know, is that a moral practice? That human being can't at all give consent for a procedure like that at that point in time. Um, and even if let's say I'm able to give consent to have some genetic modifications done to cure cancer, um, as a hypothetical, obviously. Um, you know, at what point during my lifespan am I allowed to you know modify my genetics, and does that make me still me? There uh, do we limit it to only being unborn children as to, once once the modification has been complete and they have been born and established, um, their life and ability to consent, um, what's to stop them from reversing the modification if that's what they want? So there's a little gray area and a little overlap there with what is morally right, whether it be uh, you know pre pre ability to give consent, post ability to give consent, and even furthermore, should it be moral for me to regularly modify my genetics? Say, a couple of years down the line, something else happens, and in order to stay alive, I need to modify my genetics. Um, is that moral to keep coming back and keep myself alive? At what point is it no longer natural or acceptable or moral for me to be editing my personal genome? And those are the questions that I was able to pull from watching the film Jurassic World. I thought it was very interesting, watching, a lot of the consequences of these actions. I'll leave it here on my works cited page for you while I talk. Um, but I found it very enlightening in regards to the human experience, and how we use our resources, and um, the overall consequences that come from uh, lack of care or understanding, um, which is how I feel the events occurred during the film Jurassic World is simple lack of judgment and care for creation and for um, power and danger. Creating something that has the potential um, to destroy human lives. Is it moral to do so? It's a hard question to answer, and Jurassic World does an awesome job of um, showing us the consequences for some, or the possible consequences of a technology with as much weight as this has, as the technology of genetic modification has. And with that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you were able to uh, learn something new from this, and/or sparked some questions or ideas to ask yourself or discussed with me or others. Thank you so much again for tuning in.